Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is HeroQuest, and I present to you LokeQuest, the Goblin Village. Brave heroes, we have discovered a settlement on the eastern side of Kalis. If one can believe it, a village maintained entirely by goblins. However, these goblins have stayed out of the affairs of humans, and are not aligned with the dread forces. They concern themselves only with farming, fishing, and some skilled trades in order to be able to do business with the neighboring counties. However, what these friendly, peaceful farmers don't know is that dread is coming for them, whether they're ready or not. Brave heroes, you must travel to the eastern side of Kalis, find the Goblin Village, and entreat them to join our cause, or at the very least, convince them to deny the incoming forces of Zargon. I'm afraid it won't be easy. These goblins do not trust outsiders, and as such, we need magical intervention. And so the heroes have been transmogrified into goblins for this very different Loki quest. Indeed, all of the Loki quests seem to be quite different. This one uses Towns and Taverns, volumes 1 and 2, specifically pages 5 and 6 of volume 1 for the top half of the map, and pages 3 and 4 of volume 2 for the bottom half of the map. The heroes will start in the lower right-hand corner on the road, and although these maps are filled to the brim with goblins, giant wolves, and even a couple orcs, none of the monsters will move to attack our heroes, so long as they stay in their goblin form, which they will be for the duration of this quest. Don't worry, the abomination here in the garden is actually just a scare abomination, something that was put together hastily with bits of cloth and wood to scare away the giant blackbirds that come to feast on the goblins' harvested crops. Since the heroes are goblins, they will move as goblins move and do as goblins do. Zargon, please tell the heroes that they can move up to 10 spaces on each of their turns, which is the same amount of movement allotted to the goblin. Goblins also have 2 attack dice and 1 defend die, although you won't be engaging in combat with the villagers, at least not in the traditional sense. See, the goal is to convince each goblin of the village to either remain neutral in the conflicts to come by not joining the dread forces of Zargon, or to take an active approach by joining the Empire. Either result you want to roleplay is fine, but in order to do this, the heroes will engage in a sort of mock combat. This is a combat of wills, a battle of words, a fight of conviction. And to do this, the heroes will roll the combat dice. You'll roll, as a goblin, 2 combat dice, as always, and the listener, or the defending goblin, will roll 1 defend die. If this defend die does not mitigate the damaging effects of the attack dice, then the goblin that the hero has fought with will become convinced, and you may consider this goblin to be an ally. No further interactions with the goblin that has been convinced are necessary, and the heroes will continue this action for the goblins remaining in the village. If one hero loses a battle with a goblin and is unable to convince them, then perhaps another hero can try on the same goblin. There's nothing wrong with doing this, and it represents the different heroes' abilities to speak to the goblins in different ways by taking different reasonable approaches. However, the heroes must do what they can in the time that they have, for the forces of dread are at hand. There's really only one way in or out of the village, and so at the end of the hero's 3rd round of turns, an abomination wanders into the village entrance. This is an actual enemy, a scout sent by the forces of Zargon to gauge the village for its strengths, weaknesses, and to see if it has any resources that Zargon might snap up as their own. This monster will actively pursue the heroes and attack them, and at this point the heroes can move in their goblin forms to attack the abomination. They are at a disadvantage because they are goblins, but they do have numbers on their side. And if the abomination is attacked in the full view of any of the goblins that have been converted to the side of good, they will join in on the fight, moving into melee attack if they can, firing arrows if they cannot. If the heroes manage to fell the abomination, they will learn that every 3 turns, a new enemy will appear on the board. Their job is to convince every last goblin in the village to join their cause. There are a couple of features that can be tweaked about this particular quest. For one, there are 2 orcs in this village, one of which is a carpenter. He can be seen trying to fix the walkway leading by the water wheel. The orcs are made of rougher stuff, and of course they're going to roll 2 defend dice whenever they're being convinced to join. But If the goblins can convince them, they will become part of the fighting force that will defend the village whenever a new monster arrives. The second orc is a blacksmith, holed up in this hut over here. Since she's busy at work, she won't be able to see anything going on outside unless the monsters are in her line of sight. Now all of the doors in the goblin village are open. There are a few that are shut, and we'll go ahead and break one of the rules of monster control by saying that the heroes can open these doors. They're not really shut for any particular reason. All of the houses, huts, and rooms can be searched for treasure because the goblins don't really have any notion of personal ownership. They just go where they please, take what they please, and if anybody else does the same, then it's whatever. This might sound a bit contradictory to the cause that we're talking about here, but this is their way of life and they will defend it. The goblin in the northeastern corner is a giant wolf trainer. If this goblin joins the cause, then the 3 giant wolves will also be on the hero's side. And this will be very necessary, because at the end of the next 3 turns, it's not 1 abomination that appears in the village, but 2. The goblins that help the heroes in this mission cannot be killed per se, but rather they are knocked out. If all of the monsters are defeated, then the goblins will get back up and recover to their full 1 body point. I'm going to say that this is because while Zargon does believe in using violence to get points across, if Zargon can instead enslave an encampment of goblins rather than murder them all, well, Zargon will certainly do so. I talked about searching the houses, and this quest is a reminder that you can go into the pits and search the pits for treasure as if they were separate rooms as well. Hopefully the heroes will remember this, or one of the goblins of the village can tell them to remind them. Treasure is very important, and if they find a wandering monster, well, there are no wandering monsters in this quest. However, you could, if you wished, Zargon, place an orc at the very beginning of the village every time a wandering monster is found. This represents an odd scout that has gotten to the village before the scouting party. I wouldn't do another goblin just because we're using all of the goblins that we can. This particular quest uses all of the goblins from the mythic tier of HeroQuest, and just every goblin I have except for the ones from the Prophecy of Talor and Spirit Queen's Torment expansions. And you could definitely use those if you want to, or if you don't have enough goblins, you could substitute with a couple of orcs. I think this quest uses 15 goblins altogether, which is the contents of the mythic tier plus Keller's Keep. There are also 2 orcs that are used, so of course you can substitute as many goblins with orcs as you need to. The reason that searching for treasure becomes such an important feature of this quest is because you can go to the blacksmith and actually purchase weapons from her. She will sell you the same weapons that are in the armory, but they are tailored to fit goblin hands. So now, instead of having an attack of 2, if you buy a broadsword or a broadsword from this orc blacksmith, you will be able to roll attack of 3. Since it's a goblin broadsword, once this quest is over, it's not really going to translate into a weapon that you can use after the quest though. It'll be the same as having a dagger. I haven't really thought about what to do if the heroes want to try to convince this scare abomination to join their cause. I think what will actually happen is if you go up to the abomination and win, quote-unquote, against it in a fight, then you'll have convinced the goblins to build a second abomination. And perhaps these abominations can be used as decoys for the monsters so that they can attack these scarecrows before they actually get any hits in on the villagers. If that is the case, remember, this thing doesn't actually move, it's just a scarecrow, so it will use the defense dice, but it won't use any attack dice. After 3 more rounds of trying to convince the remaining villagers, a dread warrior enters the village, and this is going to be the toughest fight yet, so hopefully the heroes have garnered enough attention and have bolstered their defenses enough to face him. After the dread warrior falls, there's 1 more phase, so the heroes will again have 3 more turns apiece to travel through the village, searching for treasure, and getting what resources they can from the blacksmith before the final wave. Here's a preview of what my final fight looks like. This time a dread warrior arrives with 2 ogres in tow against the full might of the goblin village. Can they withstand this attack? Once the final wave of dread forces are defeated, the transmogrification spell wears off and the heroes return to their original forms. What happens next, Zargon, is completely up to you and the campaign that you're playing. However, I would say that this is the end of this quest, that the heroes have gained a not too powerful but not useless new ally in their fight against Zargon Eternal. Let me know what tweaks or changes you'd make to this quest, brave heroes, by using the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your day, and onward.